Hello, all. So let's see this particular passage. So this passage basically starts on it's on philosophy, and let's see how this particular passage goes about. So our propensity to look out for regularities and to impose laws upon nature leads to the psychological phenomenon of dogmatic thinking, or more generally, dogmatic behavior. So let's just it's a very we can see it's a complicated sentence. So I mean, it somewhat ends here. So we're going to chunk it into small portions and understand it. So, our propensity to look out for irregularities and to impose laws upon nature, that means that humans' tendency, okay, that is likely to find patterns and we can say look for regularities, no, to find out the patterns and rules in the world around them, okay, leads to the psychological phenomenon of dogmatic thinking. So, this habit, we can say, can make us think in a very fixed way or a rigid way, okay. We expect regularities everywhere and attempt to find them even when there are none, okay. So what they say that we expect these sort of patterns or regularities everywhere even in situation when no such regularities or pattern actually exist, okay. Events which do not yield to these attempts, we are inclined to treat as a kind of background noise, and we stick. So they say that when something does not fit our expectations, so we ignore it, or we kind of treat it as an unimportant, and we stick to our expectations even when they are not in even when they are inadequate, and we ought to accept defeat, okay. So even when our ideas are clearly wrong, okay, we still hold on them instead of admitting that we are actually wrong, okay. Now this dogmatism is to some extent necessary, but the author now kind of changed the tone, and he says that this sort of the dogmatism, or I mean like being a rigid behavior, okay, in our thinking is sometimes helpful. It is demanded by a situation which can only be dealt with by forcing our conjectures upon the world. Okay, so they say that sometimes we need to kind of, we can say, test our ideas by applying them strongly to reality. Okay, even if we are not sure that they are right or not. So कभी हमें मतलब अपने आइडियाज को टेस्ट करना पड़ता है to see them that whether they apply strongly reality को apply करते हैं या नहीं, okay, even if we are not sure that whether they are right or not, right. Now moreover, this dogmatism allows us approach a good theory in stages by way of approximation. So they say that somewhat this dogmatism or rigidness help us improve ideas step by step, getting closer to the truth gradually, okay. Now if we accept defeat too easily, we may prevent ourselves from finding that we were very nearly right. So if we give up too quickly, अगर हम इतने stubborn नहीं होते, rigid नहीं होते, dogmatic नहीं होते, so we might miss the fact that we were actually close to being correct, right. Now some of the difficult words here is kind of propensity is one word that you should know, so it is kind of a natural tendency, okay. So that is the case. Dogmatic is another word that you should know from here, which is very rigid in one's own beliefs, and they're not willing to change one's own minds, okay. Next is the conjecture. Conjectural is one of a tone also. So it's a guesswork, okay? Guess. And I think so. Rest of the words were easy. Now it is clear that this dogmatic attitude, which makes us stick to our first impression, is indicative of a strong belief, okay? So they say that when we stick to our this dogmatic attitude, or when we stubbornly stick to our ideas or first ideas, okay, it shows we believe in them very strongly, okay. While a critical attitude which is ready to modify its tenets, which admits doubts and demand test, okay, is indicative of a weaker belief, okay. So the author is somewhat making a comparison here between the dogmatic attitude and then the critical attitude, and he says that when we stubbornly stick to our own first ideas, okay, it shows that our belief in those ideas very strongly, okay. Whereas if we are open to changing our ideas, which is basically a critical attitude, okay, we question everything, we test them, okay, it shows that our belief is not very strong because हम अपने initial belief पे doubt कर रहे हैं, okay. Now according to Hume's theory and to the popular theory, the strength of a belief should be a product of repetition. So they say that according to the philosopher David Hume and common thinking belief, okay, it becomes stronger when something is repeated many times. Okay, thus, yeah. So where I was, I lost. Yeah. Thus, it should always grow with experience and always be greater in a less primitive persons. Okay. So David Hume क्या बोल रहा है कि belief becomes stronger when something is repeated many times. So belief should become stronger with more experience and should be stronger in more developed or educated people. Okay, but dogmatic thinking and uncontrolled wish to impose regularities, a manifest pleasure in rights and in repetition as such, is characteristics of primitives and children. And so basically what does these lines say is that कि in reality अगर हम dogmatic behavior की बात करें, okay, so it feels like it is more common in children and in less developed societies. Okay, and increasing experience and maturity sometimes creates an attitude of caution and criticism rather than of dogmatism. Okay, so they say that as people grow experience and they become more mature and they grow older, okay, they often become more careful, they question, they critically analyze instead of just being sticking to a idea or being stubborn. Okay, now the words here were they were the words, almost words were, I think so, easy here. Okay, now tenets is basically, we can say, beliefs or a principle. Okay, rest all, I think so, were the easy words. Okay, now my logical criticism of Hume's psychological theory may seem a little removed, okay, from the field of the philosophy of science. Okay, now author says that his criticism of David's ideas, Hume's, okay, about human thinking might somewhat will be a little removed or unrelated to the science. Okay, but the distinction between dogmatic and critical thinking brings us right back to our central problem. Okay, but again author says that understanding the difference between the dogmatic thinking and the critical attitude, okay, it actually helps us return to the main issues in science. Now the for the dogmatic attitude is clearly related to the tendency to verify our laws and schemata by seeking to apply them and to confirm them, even to the point of neglecting refutations. Whereas so basically let's understand till here. Okay, so what they say that dogmatic thinking means we try to prove our ideas are correct by only looking for supporting evidence, and we ignore anything that proves us wrong. Okay, whereas the critical attitude is one of the readiness to change them, to test them, to refute them, to falsify them if possible. Okay, so they say that in contrast, critical thinking means we are willing to test our ideas, challenge them, and even prove them wrong if needed. Okay, now this suggests that we may identify the critical attitude with a scientific attitude. So this means that the critical thinking is the same as the scientific thinking. Okay, and the dogmatic attitude with the one which we have described as pseudo scientific. Okay, and rigid or unquestioning thinking is a kind of, we can say, a false science. Okay, now it further suggests that generally speaking, the pseudo scientific attitude is more primitive than and prior to the scientific attitude, then it is a pre-scientific attitude. Okay, now they say that, and this it further suggests that genetically speaking, the pseudoscientific attitude is more primitive, a pre-scientific attitude. So it also suggests that this rigid way of thinking come first. Okay, it's an early stage before real scientific thinking develop, and this primitivity also has its logic aspects. Okay, so this idea of being earlier or basic also makes sense logically, not just historically. Now, for the critical attitude is not so much opposed to the dogmatic attitude as superimposed upon it, right? So they say that let's just read this also, me right? So they say critical attitudes, okay, for the critical attitude is not just a second, right? Yeah. So for the critical attitude is not so much opposed to the dogmatic attitude as superimposed upon it. So critical thinking does not completely replace dogmatic thinking. It actually builds on top of it. Okay. So criticism must be directed against existing and influential beliefs in need of critical revisions. Okay. So they say that criticism to criticize something, we can say, okay, there must already be strong beliefs to questions. Okay, and these are usually dogmatic beliefs. Okay, then only हम किसी चीज को criticize करेंगे ना, जब कोई already बहुत strong या dogmatic beliefs चल रहा है तो a critical attitude needs for its raw material, as it were, theories or beliefs which are held more or less dogmatically. So critical thinking needs some fixed ideas to start with. Okay, without initial beliefs there would be nothing to question or test, right? So that is what they are saying. Now, some of the words that you should know here is pseudoscientific. Okay, so pseudoscientific is something that looks like science but is not real science. Okay, refutation is something when you're proving something wrong. Okay, so that was one word that you need to know here, but rest of the words I think so were easy here. Okay, the science must begin with myths and criticism of myths. Okay, so they say that science starts from early stories, early ideas or stories. Okay, but it actually start but also from questioning and criticizing them. Okay, uh, neither with a collection of observations nor with the invention of experiments. So they say that science does not begin just by collecting data or doing experiment. It actually starts from early ideas. Okay, and it starts from questioning and criticizing those ideas. So this is what the author is saying. Okay, but with the critical discussion of myths and of magical techniques and practices. So they say that instead the science begins not with collecting data or doing experiments. Okay, instead science begins when people start discussing and questioning old beliefs, superstitions and traditional practices. Now the scientific tradition is distinguished from the pre-scientific tradition is in having two layers. Okay, so they say that science is different from earlier ways of thinking. Okay, because it has two layers, like the latter, it passes on its theory but it also passes on a critical attitude towards them. Okay, so they say like the older traditions. Okay, science also passes down ideas and theories from one generation to others. Okay, and it also passes I mean, science also teaches people to question and test those ideas. Okay. Now, the theories are passed on not as dogmas, but rather with a challenge to discuss them and improve upon them. So they say that unlike other theories, okay, scientific ideas, we can say, are not treated as a fixed truth. Instead, people are encouraged to debate on them, to test on them, and to improve upon them. So that is the case, right? None of the words were very critical here. So the critical attitude, the tradition of free discussions of theories with the aim of discovering their weak spots so that they may be improved upon, is the attitude of reasonableness of rationality. So what they say that critical thinking basically means that you are freely discussing the ideas and theories. Okay, and the purpose here is basically to find their weakness so we can actually make them better, and this way of thinking is logical, sensible and rational. Now from that point of view here develop, all laws, all theories remain essentially tentative or conjectural or hypothetical, and according to this they say that all scientific laws and theories, they're not final, they are temporary guesses or ideas. Okay, even when we feel unable to doubt them any longer. So even if we strongly believe they are correct, they can still be wrong. Okay. Now, before a theory has been refuted, we can never know in what way it may have to be modified. So until a theory is proven wrong, we don't know how it might need to be changed or improved. Okay. So these are the words I think. So hypothetical, you all know. Okay, that is imaginary. Okay, based on a possible idea. So let's just do a quick recap of each of the paragraphs. Now, first paragraph basically starts with that humans naturally they look for the patterns. Okay, they look for the regularities, and so what they become is dogmatic. Okay, then the author says that this is good also. Okay, now why this is good? Because some sort of the dogmatic actually helps us improve ideas. Okay, because we are trusting that particular ideas. Okay, now the para number two basically says that a strong belief is equal to being dogmatic questioning. Okay, and is which is actually equal to weaker belief. Okay, so that means that कि अगर आपका strong belief है तो आप dogmatic questioning नहीं करोगे उस belief को, तो वो belief ultimately क्या बन जाएगा, weaker belief, which was actually the Hume's theory. Okay, and but later on he says that children and early humans are more dogmatic while mature people become more critical. Okay, now, the third paragraph says that dogmatic thinking looks for proofs and they basically ignore mistakes. उनको proof चाहिए कि हम इसको सही करेंगे because we are dogmatic, no? Okay. Whereas he says this paragraph says that critical thinking, they test ideas, which is they basically and tries ideas to prove them wrong. Okay, and they say that science is equal to the critical thinking and blind belief is equal to pseudoscience. Okay, which is a false science. Okay. Now, in the fourth paragraph, the author says that science basically begins with old beliefs and questioning them. It passes on ideas plus the habit of criticizing and improving them. And the last paragraph says that scientific thinking means having an open discussions and finding mistakes, okay? And all theories are temporary, okay? They can always change, okay? And we don't know a theory's limit until it is proven wrong, okay? So basically, in short, they says that science generally grows by questioning ideas, okay? So it actually grows when somebody questions ideas, not blindly believing them. And we start with beliefs, okay, but improve them through criticism and testing, and no theory is final. So this was all the essence of the passage as a whole. I hope you'll able to get this passage. In case if still there is any query, you can always ping us in the dark box.